any violence on a law enforcement officer in this country.
Let me ask you about your work as a lobbyist for Ballard Partners. You did not list your current position as a partner at the lobbying firm, nor the work you've done for your Ballard Partner clients, such as lobbying for the country of Qatar for $115,000 a month, and for corporate giants Amazon and Uber when you were asked about conflicts of interest. Why do you believe your work as a lobbyist does not constitute potential conflicts of interest? Grassley, Ms. Bondi, if you're successful in your nomination, this Democrat would like to give you 3 words of advice. Answer Grassley's letters. You'll never hear the end of it if you don't. At issue, I believe, in this nomination hearing is not your competence nor your experience. At issue is your ability to say no. More than any other cabinet official, the Attorney General has to be prepared to put the Constitution first and even tell the President of the United States you're wrong. The political danger and personal costs of such a decision are well documented. You have only to ask former Attorney General Jeff Sessions and Bill Barr, whom Donald Trump sacked for lack of loyalty. And so I have 3 basic questions I'd like to ask you. Most Americans believe that central to the peaceful transition of power in a democracy is the acceptance of the results of an election. To my knowledge, Donald Trump has never acknowledged the legal results of the 2020 election. Are you prepared to say today under oath without reservation that Donald Trump lost the presidential contest to Joe Biden in 2020?
Ranking Member Durbin, President Biden is the President of the United States. He was duly sworn in, and he is the President of the United States. There was a peaceful transition of power. President Trump left office and was overwhelmingly elected in 2024.
Do you have any doubts that Joe Biden had the majority of votes, electoral votes, necessary to be elected president in 2020?
You know, Senator, all I can tell you as a prosecutor is from my firsthand experience. And I accept the results. I accept, of course, that Joe Biden is President of the United States. But what I can tell you is what I saw firsthand when I went to Pennsylvania as an advocate for the campaign. I was an advocate for the campaign, and I was on the ground in Pennsylvania, and I saw many things there. But do I accept the results? Of course I do. Do I agree with what happened? And I saw so much. You know, no one from either side of the aisle should want there to be any issues with election integrity in our country. We should all want our elections to be free and fair, and the rules and the laws to be followed.
I think that question deserved a yes or no, and I think the length of your answer is an indication that you weren't prepared to answer yes. Have you heard the recording of President Trump on January 2nd, 2021, when he urged the Secretary of State of Georgia to, quote, find 11,780 votes and declare him the winner of that state?
No, I've heard about it through clips, but no, Senator, I've not heard it.
What was your reaction to President Trump making that call?
I would have to listen to the tape, Senator.
Well, the quote that I give you is exact. He said to the Georgia Secretary of State, find 11,780 votes.
Do you have the entire context of that call? I feel like it was much longer than that and may have been taken out of context.
It was an hour long, and
right.
You can certainly listen to it. I hope you will. Every American should. As a former prosecutor, are you not concerned that the President of the United States called a state election official and asked him to find enough votes to change the results of the election?
Senator, I have not listened to the hour-long conversation, but it's my understanding that is not what he asked him to do.
You need to listen to it. Let me ask a third question. Do you believe that the January 6 rioters who've been convicted of violent assaults on police officers should be pardoned?
Senator, if confirmed as Attorney General of the United States, the pardons, of course, fall under the President. But if asked to look at those cases, I will look at each case and advise on a case-by-case basis, just as I did my entire career as a prosecutor.
You also advise the President on pardons as part of your responsibility as Attorney General. And so I'm asking you, do you believe that those who've been convicted of the January 6 riot, violent assaults on our police officers, should be pardoned? That's a simple question.
So, Senator, I have not seen any of those files, of course. If confirmed and if asked to advise the President, I will look at each and every file. But let me be very clear in speaking to you. I condemn any violence on a law enforcement officer in this country.
Let me ask you about your work as a lobbyist for Ballard Partners. You did not list your current position as a partner at the lobbying firm, nor the work you've done for your Ballard Partner clients, such as lobbying for the country of Qatar for $115,000 a month, and for corporate giants Amazon and Uber when you were asked about conflicts of interest. Why do you believe your work as a lobbyist does not constitute potential conflicts of interest?
Well, Senator, first, that was the amount my firm received. I believe multiple people represented the country of Qatar within my firm. My role, and I am very proud of the work that I did, it was a short time and I wish it had been longer for Qatar, was anti-human trafficking efforts leading into the World Cup, which is something I'd like to talk about later too. I was registered as FARA along with many members of my firm. That was the sole portion of my representation for Qatar. Now, if there are any conflicts with anyone I represented in private practice, I would consult with the career ethics officials within the department and make the appropriate decision. I would also like to point out to you, I don't believe that I would be the first Attorney General who has represented and advocated for businesses in their past.
Of course not. And the question is whether you will recuse yourself from any case involving your Ballard clients. One of those clients was the GEO Group, was it not?
GEO, yes.
A private prison company you lobbied for. It manages correctional institutions and detention facilities. The GEO Group has faced criticism for safety violations, inadequate health care, and poor management. The U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement is GEO's largest source of revenue. Under the Trump administration, GEO stands to earn hundreds of millions of dollars by detaining immigrants if there is this mass deportation. Would you sense any conflict of interest if you're asked to judge the performance of this government contractor?
Senator, I will consult with the career ethics officials within the Department of Justice and make the appropriate decision.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Graham.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You forgot to say that John's family was from South Carolina.
The upstate, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'll give you a pass on that. From Anderson, by the way. So
The moment hung in the room like a held breath. Senator Dick Durbin leaned forward and asked a question that should have been simple, almost procedural, in a constitutional republic. Under oath, without reservation, was Pam Bondi prepared to say that Donald Trump lost the 2020 presidential election to Joe Biden? It was not a trick. It was not a trap. It was a test of clarity, of courage, and of allegiance. And yet, instead of a clean answer, the response curved and bent, stretching into explanations, context, and deflection. In that hesitation, in that refusal to speak plainly, the hearing revealed far more than words ever could, because what we witnessed here was not merely a disagreement over history. It was a portrait of modern American power, where truth is no longer a fixed point, but something negotiated in real time, shaped by loyalty and fear. Durbin was not asking Bondi to choose a party. He was asking her to choose the Constitution. He reminded the room that the Attorney General stands apart from politics by design, that this office exists to tell even a president, you are wrong when the law demands it, and he named the cost of that independence, pointing to former attorneys general cast aside when they would not bend. Bondi acknowledged that Joe Biden is the president of the United States. She acknowledged that there was a transition of power. But acknowledgement is not affirmation. And in a democracy, that difference matters. Words are not just sounds in a chamber. They are signals to the country. When leaders cannot clearly affirm the outcome of a lawful election, doubt becomes normalized and uncertainty is weaponized. The question deserved a yes or no, Durbin said, and the length of the answer told its own story. The exchange deepened when the conversation turned to January 2nd, 2021. A recorded call, a sitting president speaking to a state election official, urging him to find enough votes to change an outcome. Durbin quoted it precisely. He did not embellish. He did not dramatize. He simply asked for a reaction. And again, the answer was distance. I would need to hear the tape. I need the full context. Context in moments like these becomes a shield. But context cannot erase plain language, and it cannot soften the weight of a president pressing an official during a moment of national fragility. This is the heart of the issue. Power, when unchecked, always seeks justification. It seeks interpretation. It seeks loyal silence. The rule of law depends not on perfect people, but on clear lines that cannot be crossed without consequence. When those lines blur, when leaders hesitate to condemn actions that test the system itself begins to weaken. Then came the question about January 6th, not a broad political debate, but a narrow moral one. Should individuals convicted of violent assaults on law enforcement be pardoned? Bondi condemned violence against officers clearly and firmly. That mattered. But again, the answer retreated into process, into case-by-case review, into future discretion. Procedure has its place, but so does principle. A nation listens closely in these moments because it understands that how leaders speak now shapes how justice is applied later. The hearing did not stop there. It moved into questions of influence and entanglement. Lobbying work, corporate clients, private prison operators poised to profit from policy shifts. These were not accusations, they were conflicts presented plainly. Durbin laid out the stakes with precision. If the Department of Justice is asked to oversee contractors whose success depends on aggressive enforcement, how does the public trust that decisions are impartial? Bondi promised consultation with ethics officials. The words were correct. The process was proper. But the underlying tension remained unresolved because trust is not built on assurances alone. It is built on distance from power, not proximity to it. What this hearing exposed is not the failure of one nominee, but the strain placed on American institutions in an era of extreme loyalty tests. The Attorney General is meant to serve the law, not a movement. The Constitution does not ask for allegiance, it demands fidelity. And fidelity is proven not when it is easy, but when it carries personal cost. This is why moments like this matter. Not because they generate headlines, but because they force the country to confront uncomfortable truths. That democracy is not self-sustaining, that it relies on people willing to speak clearly when clarity is inconvenient, that silence, hedging, and half answers can do lasting damage even without a single law being broken. The Senate hearing room is not a stage for theater alone. It is a checkpoint, a place where power is questioned before it is granted. When simple questions become complicated, when history becomes conditional, the warning signs are unmistakable. America does not fall apart in one dramatic moment. It erodes slowly through normalization of doubt and erosion of accountability. But it can also be defended moment by moment by insisting on truth, by demanding straight answers, and by remembering that no individual stands above the system they serve. The Constitution is not a suggestion, it is a boundary. And every generation must decide whether it will protect that boundary or quietly step over it. That choice was on display today. If you believe these moments matter, if you believe accountability should never be optional, support our work to expose the truth. Subscribe to Liberty Report USA.